Welcome to After the Rain, a storytelling podcast from Playa Lakes Joint Venture. These are the voices stewarding the land and the stories that surface after the rain. In western Kansas, change doesn't usually start with a rule. It starts with a moment. A well that doesn't recover like it used to. A pumping bill that keeps climbing. Or realization that the next generation may inherit something different than what you had. That moment is the spark, and it's where the journey begins. We're continuing a series exploring how communities and Kansas Groundwater Management District Number 1 are working together to address water challenges and protect water for future generations. Throughout the series, you'll hear from local leaders, producers, and scientists who are turning conversations and real-world decisions into long-term solutions. Today, we're talking about how information sparks conversations and turns into real-world action on the ground. To help us understand how that happens, we're joined by Brownie Wilson with the Kansas Geological Survey.
When I first came to the survey, I was known as a data manager. We process information and collect the data and help support the scientific research. As I've grown, though, I've oversee staff now, and we do everything from water quality to water levels, and we kind of provide that support to some of the research that goes on.
And when it comes to water, the Kansas Geological Survey has a pretty unique role.
We're kind of unique in that we're a state agency, but we're housed within the University of Kansas. So I kind of like to view us as consultants, if you will, for the state of Kansas. Groundwater is definitely an important part of what we do. And so we have an entire division, a geohydrology division that's dedicated to analyzing the subsurface and how the groundwater underneath there, is it usable, how does it interact with streams and other things like that. And so we try to characterize that not only for research, but for the general public as well.
From a data standpoint, it's declining.
The Ogallala, it's in a state of decline. It just kind of depends on how fast that decline is. And what drives that really is the pumping and then precipitation's influence on that pumping.
Brownie says dry years often accelerate the trend, not because the aquifer recharges quickly in wet years, but because rain can reduce demand.
It's not so much recharge and rainfall. Does it rain or not? And is the aquifer pumped hard or not?
Kansas has tracked water levels for decades, and a big part of that is a statewide monitoring effort.
Starting in 1996, we measure about 1,400 water wells across the High Plains. We try to go to those same wells year after year after year so that we get an idea of, is it going up or down, staying the same, try to get an idea of what those trends are.
It's a lot of work, and the measurements happen fast.
If all goes well, it takes 15 minutes to measure the well. $1 million decisions are being made off of those results.
Over time, the data tells a clear story. Decline rates matter, especially where the aquifer is already thin. In those areas, even small drops can have a big impact.
It's the decline rates in the Ogallala is the challenge there, and so that's what we kind of track. And then we try to relate that then to how much water do we think is underground. Because there might be some areas where you say, ooh, that water levels are really dropping there, but they might have a fair amount of water, in supply there that they can access. And you compare that to other areas where you say, well, the groundwaters aren't dropping that much, but if that aquifer is already pretty thin, those little declines might be having a much bigger impact on the overall resource. And so those are the kind of things we try to identify.
One challenge is telling this story because people can't see groundwater.
Where the GIS, the Geographic Information System, comes in is that you can actually see things in space. And so when you do that temporal, the time and the space together, then folks can not only, everybody likes to look in their backyard, right, to see what's going on, but then you can kind of compare it to what's your neighbors look like, the neighboring counties, or what does it look like in other things like with population densities or precipitation patterns. How does this all tie together? And then to do that spatially is really, really pretty powerful.
But Brownie says groundwater doesn't move the way people assume.
Groundwater moves so slowly. We're talking a foot per day or every 4 days, which is like, years and sometimes decades just to go a mile. And so the biggest impact we have on the aquifer is what happens right here in our own state, right with our own neighborhood, our own county.
Now, for many producers, the aha moment comes when data is shown in a way that feels familiar, like a budget.
This is your aquifer budget. So when you use this much water, you can see this is what the water levels do. And if you conserve or save that water, you can see how that improves in terms of the water level declines.
And over time, they can actually see that it's working.
They can see, okay, I have been saving water, and I can actually see, and you can show me with the data that's making a positive impact on the aquifer.
That early awareness is also where trust becomes essential. Brownie says KGS's role is to provide neutral, science-based information, not to tell people what to do.
We're not a regulatory agency. We're just answering to the numbers. We don't have an agenda other than good quality science and informing those decision makers.
When people understand the relationship between use and water levels, it changes the conversation.
We're not telling anybody what they should or shouldn't do. Right? We're just showing that relationship says, when this much water gets used, this is what the water aquifer does. It goes up or down. And you can see that relationship very, very clearly.
Before any real change can happen, awareness has to spread. And Brownie has an analogy that sticks.
It's kind of like voting when you go out to vote. Like, I'm only one vote, but yeah, you got to have all these people vote to make a difference. And that's kind of the same with the aquifer. If you had just one person out there that says, I don't think I can make a change, well, you can. And if you have a few more of you and your neighbors, you absolutely can make a change in your neighborhood. And maybe that grows a little bit bigger.
One person might feel like they can't move the needle, but a community can. And that's what this episode is all about. The spark, the first questions, and the conversations that begin turning awareness into action. In our next episode, we'll hear from Matt Smith, Conservation Delivery Manager for Playa Lakes Joint Venture, about what happens when a producer is ready to take action.